Hello everybody. Today we are going to go through chapter 3, which is constellations. Starts out with this picture that you might recognize. We see it every night in the night sky. These three stars that are really close together are the most identifying characteristic of this constellation. And this is the constellation Orion. So it's hard to kind of see what these ancient Babylonians were talking about here, but this right here would be a shoulder, this right here would be a shoulder, this is Orion's belt, and this is a knee and a knee, or a foot and a foot, depending upon the picture that you look at. Orion was a great hunter. This particular constellation is one that we'll be talking about quite a bit just because it is so easily recognized in the night sky. So I'm going to kind of show you guys how to locate it if you haven't done so already. Constellation is just a region of the sky. A long time ago, people used stars as navigational tools because they didn't have GPS or Waze or Google Maps. And so they would have to follow the location of the stars in order to know that they were walking in a straight line. And over time, they gave these collection of stars different names based upon what they looked like. Now, you and I might look at this and say, how the heck did they get a hunter out of this? Who knows? But we now have taken the entire celestial sphere, which is like the imaginary globe that surrounds the Earth, and we've divided the whole sphere into 88 constellations. Now, I blew up a blue balloon and put it inside this clear globe. The blue balloon is going to represent Earth, and our celestial sphere is this imaginary sphere that surrounds the globe. And our whole sphere is divided up into 88 different constellations. Just like Minnesota is a state in the United States, every part of our night sky is part of another constellation. Okay, so we might recognize this as Orion, these few stars here, but all of the stars in this region are considered Orion. And right now, these days, it just helps astronomers communicate with each other. If they're studying a specific region of the sky, they can say, look to the constellation Orion, instead of saying, look at that bright twinkling star next to that other bright twinkling star. And they can just be a little bit more accurate. One thing that I want to point out with constellations is that even though these stars are all part of the constellation Orion, it doesn't mean they're anywhere near each other. For instance, Betelgeuse, which is this bright kind of orangey star right here, that star is 725 light years from us. So it took 725 years for the light emitted from this star to get to our eye. Whereas this one right here, which is not as bright and might seem further away, is only 244 light years away. So if we were to bring all of those stars to the same distance from our eye, they would look a lot different than they do now. But there's just this vast, vast, vast distance between them. We are looking at them from the ground in kind of a two-dimensional view. We're looking at it like it's one big sheet of stars that are all the same distance, but they really, really are not. This is another graphic of the constellation Orion, and you can see that these are the big recognizable stars right here, but all of these stars in this area are part of the constellation Orion. Constellations are very useful for astronomers. They help astronomers and other observers orient themselves in the night sky. The star Betelgeuse, which is this one right here, you can see is a little bit of a different color. It's kind of amber in color, and that's because that particular star is a red supergiant. If you recall from the lecture on the life of a star, a red supergiant is a star that is in the end of its life. Now, because Betelgeuse is 725 light years away, there's a possibility that that star is actually gone now. It's just that it takes 725 years for the light to reach our eye. There's a couple terms here, apparent versus absolute. And we talk about those two words when we talk about magnitude. Magnitude is the brightness of a star. And the difference between apparent and absolute magnitude is how bright a star seems to us when viewing it, and how bright the star actually is if we were to bring all of the stars to the same distance. So if we look back up here, Betelgeuse, its apparent magnitude would be fairly bright within this constellation, right? It's a really, really bright star right here. But in reality, it may not be as bright as even some of these smaller ones. If we were to put them all at the same distance from our eye, the absolute magnitude, which is the actual brightness, might vary greatly between how bright they seem to us from the sky, just because there's so much distance in between. The last part of this chapter just talks about astrology. Astrology, as we have talked about, is not an actual science. It's more of a pseudoscience. But it is important when we talk about constellations because of the zodiac. Now, we are all assigned a horoscope sign, or a sign of the zodiac, depending upon where we were born. We know that when we were born, or what stars were in the sky when we were born, does not dictate our personality characteristics. But if you read your horoscope in the newspaper, it might, tell you based on when you were born, what's going to happen during your day. It's interesting. It's an interesting pseudoscience, but the more horoscopes you read, and I encourage you to go out and just check out what your horoscope is for the day, you can see that they're written in a way that would apply to many, many people. It says here that there's no reason to think that the alignment of the stars has anything to do with the events that happen on Earth. The constellations are patterns made from stars in the sky. The patterns do not reflect any characteristics of the stars themselves. When scientific tests are done to provide evidence in support of astrological ideas, the tests fail. When a scientific idea fails, it is abandoned or modified. Astrologers do not change or abandon their ideas when they fail. So astrology is not a science, but they do use constellations within here. For example, I was born in August, so my sign, my astrological sign, is Leo, the lion, which is a constellation in the sky. If you were born in July, your constellation would be, I think it's Cancer, the crab, or you might be a Taurus, or an Aries, the bull, or Gemini, the twins. What I'd like for you to do is find out what your zodiac sign is today. Look up zodiac signs and it'll show you a list of when your birthday is to figure out which zodiac sign you are. And then just make a mental note of that, because we are going to do a little activity with constellations in the future, and I'd like for you to research your own zodiac constellation. All right, if we look down here, you've got a short video, and you've got 6 questions today to be answered on the iBook question Google Doc. Go ahead and do that. You don't have to turn it in yet. Again, we've got one more chapter. And I'm also going to do another video today that shows you a kind of a virtual view of the sky. So I can show you how to locate the constellation Orion in the night sky on the next clear night. Okie doke. Thank you.